Jai Sri Krishna. And today I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Vatsala Mendonca. I met her in the club and we played bridge for a while. And I always liked her smiling face. I mean, there was something that was exuding from her that I kind of appreciated. And then I was not surprised to learn that she has written a book. And then she invited me for the book launch. But I think the books were sold out, so I was not able to get a copy. So I said, come here before I get another copy of yours. I want to hear it from you, more about the book that you have written. And I want to introduce you to my listeners. So here is Vatsala Mendonca. She's written a book called The Shadow of the Palm Tree. And let's hear it from her. And hello, Vatsala, how are you doing?
Hello, Shakun, doing well. Thank you for chatting with me today.
Oh, always a pleasure. And so tell me, Vatsala, what is the source of the story?
Shakun, let me just start first with telling you a little about the book. As you mentioned, the novel is Shadow of the Palm Tree. It is set in Goa and spotlights a little-known facet of Goan history, the presence of African slaves in Goa who were brought down by the Portuguese from their colonies in Angola and Mozambique. They served in military establishments, religious institutions, and domestic households. The novel tells the story of one Goan family, the Abrios, who in the 1700s not only converted to Christianity, but joined one of the most lucrative enterprises of Christian Europe, the slave trade. This unfortunate career choice would bring with it power, prestige, wealth, but also a curse that snaked across the generations.
Why do you call it a curse?
So, because it's the story, the pivot really of this story is the slave trade, I have got one of the slaves who comes to Goa from Mozambique and who works in this Abrio household.
Before we go on, what year is this set in?
So it starts in the 1700s. Portugal, yes, was in Goa from 1510 all the way through to 1961. So and of course, the Portuguese began bringing slaves to Goa from 1555. I mean, documents establish this. But I have had this family joining Christianity in the 1700s, joining the slave trade in 1700s. And so it begins in 1700s, but of course it ends finally in 1961 when Goa was liberated.
Okay, so that's interesting. But tell me, I think already what you've told me sounds very poignant. So tell me, what is the central theme of your book and what is it that you are trying to tell?
So, Shadow of the Palm Tree is in essence the story of Goa, its traditions, culture, history. But the pivot around which the story swirls is, like I said, the Portuguese slave trade that cast its shadow even over this beautiful land. And I'm sorry, but to get back to your first question, which was what was the source of this novel? It's a question that everybody asks me, in fact, ever since the novel has been published. And I like to say a little fancifully that this story has been dancing inside me since I was 10 years old.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so interesting. I love dancing, and you love dancing too.
So that is one more thing that Shakun and I have in common. But, I'm Goan, and like many Goan families from around the country, my family and I would journey every summer to Goa for our annual summer holiday. It was a pilgrimage of sorts. And while the rest of the family would spend their time enjoying everything from Goa's, buffet of delights, everything from her beaches to her bibinka, I would spend my time collecting stories there was such rich territory to mine, a beautiful palatial home that was haunted by a murdered slave, an annual exorcism, a woman with the evil eye. But most fascinating of all for me was the presence of this tall, beautiful African woman who ran our family home. An African in Goa.
You know, it reminds me of Gone with the Wind. It really does remind me when you see the slaves and you know how they ran their home and how attached they were to the families. They went. I don't know if that was the case in your story.
So, of course, my story begins in the 1700s, but the woman who really triggered it all is the woman who ran our home, as I was saying, and this is in the 1970s, of course. And I would keep asking my aunts, I would besiege them, in fact, with questions, which would be, who is she and where she come from and what was her story, because there had to have been a story. And honestly, I got no answers because I don't think anybody really knew. And it was only years later when I was researching the Siddhis of Karnataka, who are native Indians of African origin, that I got my answers, because these Siddhis of Karnataka are descendants of runaway slaves from Goa.
Oh, wow.
So I was finally able to sort of get my answers, but I really believe that in that time, the lines between reality and fantasy got blurred, hence the novel Shadow of the Palm Tree.
So it's not I guess a lot of fiction is interwoven in the novel, isn't it? Or no, is it all the way you perceived it at that time?
So, no, of course, you're absolutely right. It's complete fiction. But it's really, if I was asked what is the genre of the novel, I would say it's magic realism. But for
What
me,
is it?
Magic realism.
Okay.
But for me, magic realism is a fantastical story, a magical story, but rooted in reality. So the reality is that African slaves were brought to Goa, and many of them brought with them the powers of their ancestors, and many of them, of course, were ill-treated by their owners. But the landscape of my story became a magical one, because I think it was bringing together Goan sensibilities with African sensibilities, which created really sort of magical elements in a dark story.
Great. So I guess we leave the readers to get into the book now, and unless you want to tell us something more. But before you do, if you want to tell us a little more, then I would like to know about you now. Of course, we've always vibed, but we have never really gotten to know one another that much. But I always appreciate women who, of course, while being a mother and a wife, which itself is a full-time occupation, I mean, it probably exceeds all the other occupation. Besides that, women who can find time and energy to do something else, I have always been. It is what I call the power of the feminine. Power of the feminine, meaning the power of the feminine qualities that we possess that are probably ignored by the men. Well, maybe, or maybe they are coming to light, or maybe I would like to bring them to light. Who knows? But whatever it is, Vatsala, what is it that defines you? What makes you tick? What are your strengths?
Oh, wow. That is a very interesting question. So what defines me? I think it's the joy I get. Yes, I think it's the joy I get from my relationships with my family, my friends, my pursuit of my passions. Of course, writing is my primary passion.
Oh, you've written before also?
Yes, so I've always been a journalist, scriptwriter, editor.
Oh, okay.
But this is my first novel.
Okay.
Which is strangely the piece of writing that I've enjoyed the most. So I've been writing for 40 years. So to get back to joy, the joy of life, and I think even in the sad times, of my life, and at 65, I've known many sad
You're
times.
65. Why did you tell us? Why did you tell us your age?
So at my age, I have known many sad times, but I have, even in those times, I think been able to find the joy in life. And just to extend your question a little, I think if I was to figure out what is the mantra of my life, I really think it would be choosing to be kind. I think it's something that I don't always succeed in it, and I'm not always able to, but I think if I have a choice, I choose to be kind.
So that was wonderful, Vatsala. I enjoyed listening to your chatter, and I'm sure my listeners will enjoy it too. And so mull over it, get the book, enjoy it, be in Goa through the pages and the words of Vatsala Mendonca. And until next time, you take care and God bless.